Hi everyone! For those of you who are visiting my channel for the first time, I'm Mika Kim and I create videos about my experiences in consulting, the tech industry, and just anything that I want to talk about. So in this video, I wanted to talk about things to look out for when you're looking to rent a new place. So this is now my 9th year living by myself, and through those years, I've accumulated a lot of know-hows in regards to searching for a good unit. I would say that I'm a particularly picky person when it comes to looking for units to live in, because kind of as a huge introvert, I really enjoy my time staying at home, doing different things. And in addition, since I'm also working remote more at my current job, having a not perfect, you can't find a perfect unit, but having a really good unit to live in is super important to me. So this is actually a list of items that I've written down for myself as a reference to check every time when I'm going for an apartment or condo viewing. And I will skip over the obvious basics like costs, where the unit is located, where the building is located, because those things are probably already at the top of your mind when you're looking for a place. So I'll go into these other kind of details that you don't really think about until you live in a unit that sucks and you're like, oh shit, I should have thought about this before I moved into this unit. So let's get started. Number one is check the direction your unit is facing. So what I like to do is I open up the Compass app on my phone and I face where the window is facing and see which direction this unit is facing. So the reason why the direction of your unit is important is because it directly affects the amount of sunlight that comes into your unit every day. If you're north facing, you won't get too much sunlight, almost none. If you're south facing, you'll get sunlight throughout the whole day. And if you're thinking about kind of the cycle of like the sun, like rising to setting, the sun rises on the east side. So if your building is east facing, you're gonna have more sunlight during the morning and the day. If your unit is west facing, because that's where the sun sets, you'll get more sunlight during the afternoon and evening times, depending on how long the sun is out for. So I initially thought that the direction of the unit didn't really matter and the amount of sunlight coming into my unit didn't matter because I used to go to work every single day. So I'd be outside during the day. And if this is also applicable to you, this might not be as important because you'll be commuting to work, you'll be coming back from work, maybe your office has better sunlight, or maybe you're just walking around during the daytime to grab food or whatnot. So you have that exposure to the sun. But if you're spending a lot of time at home, and I learned this the hard way where I lived in a north-facing unit during the pandemic where I was stuck home 24/7 with no sunlight, it was super miserable. My unit got very humid as well because I wasn't getting any good sunlight. So just keep that in mind when you're looking for a unit. It might not be at the top of your list, but it's something you should consider. And the second factor that will also affect the amount of sunlight you're getting and also the amount of privacy you get in your unit is how close is your unit to other buildings. If we're talking about apartment buildings and you're on a lower floor and you have like a building like right nearby, chances are that building is gonna block the amount of sunlight you get. And this will suck for the privacy of your unit. So back to kind of my other horrible experience, I used to live in this unit. It was like a really luxury apartment. I really loved the apartment itself, but specifically my unit was facing this direction where I had an apartment building in kind of one corner and an office building in another corner. And during nighttime, you could literally like see through what's happening in the building that's facing you, and it was not good because that also means that other building across from you can also stare into your unit. So I had to have my shades down all the time, like as soon as like it started getting dark. And even if it was during daytime, if you kind of looked hard enough, you could still look at what's happening in each of the buildings. So a lot of times I just had my shades down and it just kind of felt a little trapped, especially during the lockdown time where I was just at home for days and days. I don't think I would ever want to live in a unit that's like so nearby a building anymore. But like I said, if it's like a unit like that, it's probably going to be cheaper. And also if you're out most of the day and you just come home to sleep, then it might not be as important to you. Number 3, this is something that you have to check. Screw direction, whatever. Like if you could check only one thing, check this, which is the water pressure and the temperature of the water. So whenever I go for an apartment viewing, I make sure to run the kitchen faucet to see the water pressure is good, the hot water turns on quickly. Same with the washroom, I'll check the washroom faucet, like the sink faucet and the shower, to make sure that the water pressure is good enough and to check that hot water is running properly. And while you have those faucets running, so let's say you step into the washroom while you're viewing a unit, have the sink faucet running, have the shower faucet running, and try like flushing the toilet at the same time. Reasoning behind that is while you're having the faucets running and you flush the toilet and you suddenly see the faucets go weak or the toilet flushing go weak, this probably means that the water pressure in your building is not that good. And these things are very important to check because you don't want to have to flush the toilet like 5 times every time you go to the washroom, or you don't want to have to wait 10 minutes until your shower runs hot. So don't be shy. If you're looking at a unit, make sure you check this. This is super, super, super important. Number 4, check how the windows open in your unit. So this might kind of be a silly thing, but this actually becomes pretty important. I used to live in one of those units where my window opened up like just a teeny bit. Like it's one of those kind of like push windows, and it opened up maybe like this much. And because of that, I couldn't get good air circulation in my unit. And as I mentioned, I think I was just kind of scarred during this whole lockdown where I was just at home all the time, and I started like picking out all these like nitty-gritty things that are really annoying. But anyways, because of that, it was really hard to get good air ventilation in my unit. And this really sucked, especially after cooking food that had strong aroma, because I just could not get the smell out. No matter how long I had like the fan running in the kitchen, like it's just not the same as getting like fresh air from the outside. And kind of be aware of this, especially if you're living in a small studio unit where you have no bedrooms, because you might run into a situation where you cooked food that has like a strong aroma and you're trying to go to bed and you still like smell that food. So check for that if this is important to you. Number 5, if possible, try to stay in the unit for a couple of minutes in complete silence. And the reasoning behind this is not 100% accurate, but it will be good at giving kind of these red flag indicators in terms of how noisy your unit gets based on its surroundings, like outside surroundings and your neighbors. What I like to do is I like to kind of close all the doors and the windows, and I just kind of like stand there in silence and see how loud the roads are. Or you might hear like big footsteps from the unit above or the units beside you. As I mentioned, this is not accurate because at the time of your viewing, your neighbors might not be around, but at least it'll kind of give you a good understanding of the outside environments. So if you're very sensitive to sound, I highly recommend that you try to do this if you can. And so when I'm looking at units, apartment or condo units, I have told apartment leasing specialists, hey, I want to check how loud it is outside. Do you mind if I just kind of stand here quietly for a bit just to see how bad the noise is? And 100% of the time, they were totally okay with it. They didn't think it was weird or anything. So check for that. Number 6, another thing that you should try to look out for while you're viewing a unit is cabinet space. So this is kind of something that's important to me because I have a lot of items. I'm really trying to slim down now and trying to like throw away or give away items that I don't really need. But a lot of the times you'll have more items than you think you do. And having a lot of good cabinet space helps organizing and keeping your unit tidy. So look out for that to see how many good cabinet spaces there are. And in addition, it saves you from buying extra organizing furniture. So if you have an in-closet unit where your closet kind of has these drawers or whatnot, then that saves you from having to buy a separate dresser. So when you're just taking notes about the unit that you looked at, maybe this is something that you can write down and take into consideration. Number 7, bring furniture measurements in advance and try to visualize the placement of your furniture. If you have a furniture in mind that you want to purchase, or if you're moving from an old unit to a new apartment unit and you already have your furniture, try to remember the measurements or note the measurements down of kind of big piece furnitures. Some of the measurements that I carry around is the size of my desk, the size of my couch, size of my TV console, and also the size of my bed. Because these are kind of big furniture items that I have to fit into my apartment, I make sure to remember or note down these measurements. And when I'm looking at units, I don't bring around those measuring tapes It's good if you carry them, but if you don't, there's a lot of like apps these days where it kind of measures, not accurately, but like approximately, it measures like the amount of space for you. So that's something that I do when I'm kind of like, well, this unit seems a little small, will it fit all my stuff? Then I'll try to measure the unit. If you forgot to do that, also try reaching out to the apartment leasing specialist and ask, hey, I viewed this unit, do you mind sending me the measurement of the unit so I can check that it fits all my furniture. The last thing you want is to move into a unit and then find out that your furniture doesn't fit, and then you have to go through the headache of trying to throw away or sell your furniture, and also to try to get a new one. It's like a waste of money and time, so make sure to have those kind of key furniture measurements handy. And number 8, it's not something to look out for, but this is something you should do when you're viewing apartments or condos, is take a video of the full space. Photos are not good enough. I noticed that when I just take photos of the unit, I don't have a good understanding about like how big the space is actually, how the spaces connect, if there are any kind of empty spots where I can fit certain things, or generally what the layouts look like, because the photo can only capture so much of the space. And you're not going to take a frame of kind of like each space staggered. You're just going to try to take a picture of like a general space. Like this is the living room, this is the kitchen. And then you kind of forget what the layout looks like. And so taking a video is so much more helpful when you're trying to remember the places that you've been to. Also, another tip is when you're viewing a bunch of different places at once, what I like to do is I like to start off the video or the photo with the number of the unit so that I can be like, oh, okay, wait, this is unit 802 and this is what it looked like. Oh, starting from this picture, it's unit 917 and this is what it looks like. Kind of a small tip that I have. Oh, and also when you're taking this video, make sure to move really slowly, because if you're just kind of like walking around and when you're trying to view it again, like you're gonna get motion sick. So try to walk around slow and steady. Try to capture like the whole space so that you can kind of pause and see, oh right, this kitchen had an interesting layout. I don't think I can fit my dining table and things like that. Kind of another more general tip is when you're viewing a place, don't rush because you feel bad for taking up like the realtor's time or the apartment leasing specialist's time. This unit that you're viewing is potentially a place that you're going to live in for at least a year or so. And you want to make sure you put in all of the time so you get all of the information that you need to make an informed decision. And now I have some tips and questions that you should ask the building or the realtor themselves. So a lot of the times the apartment or the unit will have kind of the rent price up front, and a lot of the places won't cover utility bills as part of the rent price. So you might think a unit is like, for instance, $2,000, but then later you might find out that utilities in total cost you about $400. So that has happened to me before when I was living in this particular unit. The rent itself was already kind of steep, but then it was still below my budget line. But then when I got my first utility bill, it was so much more expensive because there were costs for package forwarding, there was cost that went into every person that lived in that building for concierge, for 24/7-hour security and things like that. So the amount of money I spent just solely to live somewhere was so much more higher than I thought it would be. So ask your leasing agent about kind of the average utility bill. They might not have the answer for it, but they also might have answers for it. For me, I had maybe like a 7 out of 10 success rate where the leasing agents knew how much on average monthly utility bills were. And this will definitely help you understand if this overall cost will fit within your monthly budget. This is also something that's super important to me, is the security in the building. Is there a 24-hour concierge? Is the building access controlled with the fob? Are there security cameras? Is there a security that walks around the building regularly? These are things that I like to ask and make sure that the building has at least like a couple of these like line of defenses, because I don't want to live in a building where I don't feel safe. And also, this is a little tangent, but if your building is access controlled, can you buzz people up? I think this is super important because I order food delivery a lot, and it's kind of annoying if you have to go down every single time to pick up your food. But if you can buzz them up and they can just come up and drop it off at your door, that's like the ideal scenario. So like, not that important. This is definitely not like a deal breaker for me if I can buzz someone up, but it's like kind of like a plus point. Number 12 is check for packages and mail control. So especially in this day and age where we order packages all the time, I check if there's a secure package locker or a concierge that stores a package for you, because obviously you don't want random people stealing your package and then going through the headache of trying to find it or just lose it. So that's also something that I look out for. Number 13, if you're living in a building, and especially a high-rise building, I ask for the total number of units in this building. If you're living in a complex where there are a couple of buildings connected together, I ask how many units are in this building and the number of elevators. Imagine if there's just 2 elevators for a 40-floor high-rise with a couple of hundred units. It's going to be disaster during rush hour trying to catch the elevator. And imagine if one elevator was down. That is just like a formula for chaos. Number 14, try to read the reviews online or try to talk to people that actually live in that unit. Obviously, when you're apartment viewing with your realtor or with the apartment leasing specialist, they're only going to try to tell you the good things so you can sign the unit. But the things that we're interested in are these kind of details or things that are not great about living in this building, so you can check if that's like a deal breaker for you or not. There may be incidents like water leaks in the past, or maybe fire alarms just go off way too common in this building, things like that only people that have lived there knows. So I look at Yelp, I look at Google reviews to make sure that none of these things that people are writing about are deal breakers. So for instance, if there are things like, hey, this building has pest control issues, then that'll be a deal breaker for me. But if there are things like the parking situation is not that great, then that's not that important to me, because at the time right now I don't drive. Maybe it will become more important to me when I start driving, but for now that's not a deal breaker. So you can kind of start sussing out things that are important to you and that are not as important to you by looking at these reviews. And also something that I've started doing recently is I do this only when I'm on those self tours. I would kind of just talk to random people that live in the building. I'll kind of stop them and be like, hey, I'm viewing this apartment right now. Can I ask you a couple of questions? What you like about the building, what you don't like about the building, things like that. Every single person I asked, they were super friendly, they were super honest, and I really, really appreciated it. So for one of these apartments that I was viewing very recently, I was talking to 2 ladies that were in the building. I asked them, hey, do you feel safe? And they said there's like a really good sense of community here and they felt really safe. But the downside is like fire alarms would just go off so frequently and so often. And that was kind of the downside. And that was very good information for me to comprehend and be like, oh, hey, should I live in this building or not? And finally, this is my final advice, is always ask if there are deals or promotions. So this is more kind of geared towards apartments, but it's just worth asking. A lot of times they do post that on their website being like, hey, there's like a 1 month free if you sign on for 12 months, etc. But sometimes they might not post it, and if you ask them, they might tell you, and that can also affect your decision, because cost of the unit is, I think, obviously one of the most important factors that you should be thinking about when you're looking to sign a unit. Always worth asking. Ask if there are any promotions, offers, or concessions for the unit that you're signing. Or another thing is, maybe you're thinking about signing for 12 months only, but then there's a promotion where if you sign for 13 months, you get a month free, but nothing for 12 months. So try to ask for them and see if you can get a deal. In case there are some of you who are contemplating this, and I see this happen a lot when people are moving to different cities, is should I actually check out the unit or not? And my answer is absolutely 100%, 1000% yes, you need to go and check out the unit yourself. Pictures are pretty deceiving and does not share a lot of information about the unit. Like for instance, it's those things like you won't know what the view of the unit will look like, or like how spacious it feels like. And I've also went to apartment viewings when I did my initial research, and when I looked it up online, it looked great. I was like, honestly, if I like the unit, I'll probably sign. And then I've actually stepped into that apartment and it felt so disgusting and gross. So these are just things that you won't know until you actually go to that unit yourself. Make sure, if possible, try to go to the unit before signing it. And so I know this was a very long list. Some of you that are watching might be like, oh my goodness, who is that picky about finding an apartment unit? And I also understand there's probably not going to be a place that satisfies all of the criteria. But if you take away one thing from this video is just have these lists in mind. Just kind of have this kind of as like a checklist when you're going to an apartment viewing, and check all these things. And then later you can kind of like rank what things are more important to you, and what things are deal breaker, and what things are just kind of like, if this works out, this is good. If not, it's not. Obviously, like, there's the very important things like the cost of the unit, where the building is located, like is it in a safe neighborhood, is it in a neighborhood that's close to your work or school or whatever, and then there's these like kind of like miscellaneous things that I talked about, and you know, some of them might be a deal breaker for you, because for me, living in a unit with no security would honestly be a deal breaker. But things like maybe if it's like a little noisy outside, or maybe if the neighbors are a little loud, I think that's something that I can kind of live with. So just take this as like a list that you can kind of stack rank based on what is important to you, so that you can make a good decision later in terms of what unit you want to sign. So I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching it till the end. And as I mentioned, if you want to hear more about my stories in consulting or the tech industry, I'm currently a software engineer at a FAANG company, or just kind of, you know, any general career advices or things like that, please like and subscribe this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.